Welcome to the spot. It's time to ignite. Oh yeah. Operation Hangout. The feeling's just right. Chilling with the crew. We're ready to groove. Opinions flying high. Come on, let's move. Hang out all night long, all night. Laughing and debating, playing our song. Oh yeah. Share your thoughts, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Operation Hangout, let's reach for the sky. Let's fly. Pull up a chair, let's get in the zone. Voices blend and smooth like a funky trombone. Oh yeah. Topics from the heart, making us think. With a twist and a shout, raise up your drink. Cheers! Hang out all night long, all night. Laughing and debating, playing our song. Oh yeah. Share your thoughts, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Operation Hangout, let's reach for the sky. Let's fly. Bring it down, shake it up, feel the beat. With every word we share, the circle's complete. Living loud, think it proud, that's what we do. Oh yeah. Join the club, come on through, we're waiting for you. Alright. Hang out all night long, all night. Laughing and debating, playing our song. Oh yeah. Share your thoughts, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Operation Hangout, let's reach for the sky. Let's fly. Hang out.
What is going on, everybody? We're back at it with another episode of our favorite show on YouTube. Of course, I am talking about Spartan SQ Network, the Operation Hangout. But I can't do this by myself. But I am going to bring the first person up. This was his idea to do this show. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's all rise for our favorite bolded president.
Good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing?
What is going on, my man? Let
It
me
is good.
go ahead. I'm listening.
No, things are good. Been ripping and running all day or whatever. I was trying to finish up my taxes, but the project's got priority over that. So just trying to run and certainly get prepared for the show. Definitely, I've been looking forward to the show for some time, and looking forward to really having, like I said, an open dialogue with a variety of people. Coming at this from a lot of different viewpoints and perspectives. So this might not be sort of the fun show, although I find these things fun, but more of an intellectual conversation tonight on the Hangout regarding this topic. So I'm like I said, I've been looking forward to this for some time. And as always, I thank you for the opportunity to share. And hopefully this will be a successful show as a result.
Yeah. So let's get the second person here. Of course, he's our most angriest little friend we have. Of course, I'm talking about our friend Angry Elf.
What up? What's going on, everybody?
What's good, sir?
Wow,
There you
you
go.
actually are using the headset for once.
Yeah, because the last time we tried to play around with this, I was echoing. So I didn't want to do that on live showing.
So, all right, let's get our next person here. Is our little friend Black David.
Hello? Hello?
First and foremost,
Is
I'm
he already
not little.
asleep?
I am a big man.
And
I'm kind of busy. I am 6 foot tall. There's nothing little about me in the black African body of mine. Okay.
all right, let's get our last guest in here. I am, of course, talking about a friend from the forest. He says hello, and he is our special Jedi Mike.
Hey y'all, how you doing?
What's going on,
Doing
my man? How are
great.
you?
Doing great.
going
It's
on?
great to see you, man.
All right.
Great to see you.
So this is Paul's show. So
He's
I'm
little than
gonna
me, so
step
you
back
call him
as the
little.
host. What?
Jeremiah is little. You could call him little. I'm big.
Okay.
Oh, he's using his Jedi superpower to size increase. He's like Ant-Man, you know. He just blew up to 50.
David,
Watch
David.
yourself.
Not even 5 minutes into the show, you're gonna make me do it. So I have to do it. Oh, I hit the wrong button.
That's what she said.
I'm not getting into that.
Yeah.
Nope,
But
neither
in
am I.
any event,
Anyways, here we are.
yeah, that's right. Right.
Yeah,
So on with the
so
show.
saying, this is Paul's idea. So this is Paul's show for today. I am not the host. Paul's gonna be the host for that. I'm gonna sit back and relax for once.
At your leisure. At your leisure. But well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for being a part of this conversation. Jedi Mike, especially. I know you're a busy man, just coming back from MovieCon, I believe it was. How was that?
CinemaCon in Las Vegas. I mean, it was good. I mean, got a bunch of
Oh my God.
products and stuff from movies coming out and everything, and interviews and stuff in the line. And I am literally exhausted right now. So this week I have not posted anything. I'll be preparing stuff for next week and everything. But I'm just kind of like,
Well,
trying to recover.
all the more
So-
reason why I can't thank you enough. Because when I thought about this topic, I thought about you, certainly your background, certainly being a person of faith, and who's not ashamed to share that and talk about that and operate in that. But again, you're also into comic books and fantasy and science fiction, a lot of things. And I see a lot of people in the faith community. There's a lot of crossover in that space. And so it's always, especially in the last few years, really, I would say when the MCU, when the Infinity story came out, the Infinity War, and then Endgame and whatnot, really honed in on that. In fact, I actually used it as an object lesson, even in my church, to work in the Vacation Bible School and talk, how to talk about God in ways that you could kind of relate to, and using superheroes as a bridge to have that kind of conversation. And just as I've watched these movies over the years, there's just been a lot of themes where there's a lot of intersection, a lot of parallel, even mimicking to a degree of content that that I've always been curious about, but I've never heard it talked about sort of like in an open forum, in an open conversation. And so what I wanted to do was talk about this idea of gods, not necessarily maybe not versus superheroes, but God with superheroes. It can go in a lot of different directions, but the idea of gods and superheroes has been with us since basically the creation. However you think about it, whether you're atheist or believe or faith person or not, we've always had these images and these perceptions of that. So the first question I'm asking tonight is, what is that attraction? Why is it that, for a lot of us, regardless if you have any declared faith or religion at all, what is it about these superheroes why we're so attracted to it, and from such a young age? So it gets just pass it around, just your thoughts, just on the panel here. What is it that draws us to these characters, and does that come out of possibly an internal need for us to believe in something? Is that driving the conversation? And before the show, I sent out to a lot of you, hope you got a chance to see it. I know a lot of guys didn't necessarily like Batman v Superman. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it. But I thought that scene in there. It was a 3-minute scene, but I thought it was a really pointed scene where you had Neil deGrasse Tyson, who was making a cameo. You've had some other thought people and philosophers, and they were talking about, like, what does Superman mean? And looking at the imagery of how people look at Superman, like, as a deity to a large extent, and and just how we oftentimes want to impart our views on him. My favorite line in that, the guy was saying, look, maybe he's not a Christ-like or deity figure. Maybe he's just a good guy just trying to do some good in the world. But oftentimes impart our beliefs on him. So, but it would be interesting if there was an actual superhero in the world. How would we treat him or her, for that matter? If they were in the world. But what drives that? So I'll start with Pete, and we can just kind of go around and just talk about that. What is what's your attraction to, I guess, superheroes, and why they're so important? Because there's a lot of fandom around the world, probably even more so than religion itself, because you have, like, the religious people.
I think it's a wow factor, Paul, to be honest with you. It's a wow factor for me. Something, if seeing something in flying in the sky, kicking somebody's ass, I'm like, that's cool. That's wow. I wish I can fucking do that, but we can't. The closest thing we have to reality, to a superhero, are angels. Let's be straight up here. Like, our Archangel Michael is one of my favorite angels because he kicked Satan's ass up inside down several times. And I actually had this conversation with my priest. He goes, I take a win and a win. I'm like, you're the only son of a bitch. He goes to me, you're going to consider a Archangel like a kick-ass demon because you like superheroes. I take the W. He goes, I like you like some kind of angel. But my point's trying to do it's different. It's unique. Excuse me. It's wow. Seeing something going through the sky and like, I want to fly. I want to be strong. I want to be able to teleport myself through a different universes, or be able to build my own armor to fly. It was something we cannot have in our hands. Okay, I'll put it this way, Paul. Was it a toy you always wanted, right?
Sure.
And you do anything to have that toy, right?
Well, not anything, but yeah.
Back when you were a kid, you would have done anything as a kid.
Yes, beg and plead, absolutely.
Yeah. So, you cannot have those powers. As much as you beg and plead, stomp your feet, cry, whatever. But you want those powers. And your mom and dad says, no, you cannot have those. Whatever reason. You're not going to be a happy little president, are you?
That's interesting, because we're gonna that's another aspect of this that I want to broach later in the show.
Yeah.
But that's a good point as well, is the idea of not being able to get something that we desire. I think that's something I want to visit in another portion. But Rob, how do you, Angry Elf, how do you come in on this? Why do we love superheroes so much? Why do you love superheroes so much?
It's just the fact that, they can do things that some of us can't do. Do feats of strength, fly. Some of us have flown. I mean, I've flown for about 6 seconds, as I jump out of an airplane. Doing superhero feats. But, yeah, it's just like, crawling on a wall, or being able to heal really quickly, or having, 6-inch claws come out of your hands, and being able to go toe to toe with somebody who is, big and green and nasty. I think it's just, the spectacle of it all. Maybe a little bit of, yes, the wow factor, but the spectacle of it all, something fantastic and astonishing. So especially in comics, comics, they can do pretty much anything they want. It's just limited by the imagination. So, yeah.
Awesome. David, how about you? David, are you there? David took a pause. We'll go to Jedi Mike and come back to David. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so I think with superheroes, well, you have to start with what they were originally created for. It was like folktale for children, storytelling that kids can listen to and everything. But I think the reason why kids gravitate to it, because you're pretend of a character or a figure, you're pretending like this person is strong and invincible. If we're going to talk about religion, we're thinking that, okay, well, Jesus is strong and invincible, right? And you see him overcoming, all these trials and tribulations, even also making the sacrifices, but also
Hmm.
representing morality, which I think with superheroes, why people gravitate to it, is exploring, the ways
Hmm.
of right and wrong. There's the
Right.
bad guy, then there's the good guy. And over years, how modern literature has evolved. Now we're trying to explore, well, it's not just the good guy and the bad guy. Then it's like
Hmm.
more of the flawed character. You know, is it more of right or wrong, or what is better or what is worse? Those things, and just many
Hmm.
different characters that cross that line. Um, but yeah, I feel like that's one of the things that can gravitate one to children, which over time, when we grow and become adults and stuff, and like why we still attach our main identity into those figures. It's the same thing with religion. We put our identity through Christ instead of our own, or
Hmm.
try to be like this character. And from a superhero's point of view, well, kids are like, well, I want to be like Spider-Man. I want to, or I might. Spider-Man probably one of the most
Hmm.
relatable superheroes out there. And then but you have other characters that might reveal a layer of yourself, like of, okay, well, Superman represents this type of savior, the strongest there is, and everything, God that comes from the sky, and it swoops in and saves
Hmm.
saves the day and save people, right? But he represents hope. And then you're thinking again of a Messiah figure representing that. Now I have, and then I'm glad you mentioned Batman versus Superman, because I don't know where we're gonna go in that conversation. But like, yeah, I had kind of had issues with terms of how you're representing this Messiah figure,
Hmm.
attaching it to Superman, on from a comic perspective, not religion. It's clear as day. But what I feel like those parallels of like religion, or faith, I should say, if anything, um of the morality of right and wrong, and how religion, and having whatever god that you serve, basically is
Hmm.
representing what is your moral compass, in which that's also the foundation
Hmm.
of these
Hmm.
superheroes and these characters. So but yeah, I
Gotcha.
just think that's
Gotcha.
just
David,
interesting.
how about you, sir? What's your take? Why do you like superheroes? And it's interesting. Mike had talked about, certainly we use these as stories for children, but again, we carry these affinities even into adulthood. I mean, I'm rocking my Superman shirt now. It's anytime a superhero movie's on, I don't know if it's just a kid in me or is it something greater that I'm just drawn to that. So it's like it's kids, it's adults. If you go to Comic Con, you got people from 8 to 80 at these events, and so it seems to go even beyond that of just children's tales and fables. It goes deeper to something seemingly in us. But what's your take on that? And also, I don't know if you got a chance to see
I'm
the Batman v Superman clip, but any insights from that one as well?
I would first say for someone who first started into comic book, that was Marvel before I got into DC, then got into anime before I spent 7 years in Nigeria and come back. At first, it was that wow factor growing up.
Mhm.
But as I got older, it's more of a curiosity and trying to find a deeper meaning of things because let's be, I like what Jeremiah put his perspective concerning superheroes. It's more like some people may put a messiah complex on such character, which is non-fictional. No, which is
Mhm.
fictional, but it's not
Mhm.
reality. But at the same token, if we look outside the United States or the American ideology, many countries have their own superheroes like deity that have been passed down through multiple generations, whereby either it's a god or it's based on a folklore, either it's someone who considered to be a deity because they shown some type of supernatural ability that is not natural to them and they give them such
Mhm.
name. I always try to understand what is the reason behind such things. It also applied to our African culture when we had a conversation about God and deity, like the Shango, the Orisha, and many more as well. Whereby, if you were to study the African history, there were people who were portraying supernatural ability, which is more so on the sideline of voodoo or
Mhm.
witchcraft, so to speak, which is not known on the American side, but it's known in African other countries' ideology as
Right.
well. My thing is, how was it possible to make such a thing where it became marketable in today's society?
Mhm.
It became a pastime entertainment or something that carried great value over the period of
Mhm.
time. If you have a first or second edition of Superman, the original copy, compared to what's now, that have more worth than what it is that the present Superman
Mhm.
has. If you have it in mint condition, these are things that I'm always curious about, because especially when you got into the anime, there are anime programs that talk about different cultural ideology beside the Norse mythology, beside the Greek mythology, beside the African mythology, that only we have the chance to look to the history book to learn these things. It exposed me to things that I thought to ask the question: how come humanity built such deity or God or superhero to replace something that's based on a faith, or it is something just for a pastime entertainment to keep them focused, or to, how you would say, wrestling is no different either. Wrestling do the same
Mhm.
exact thing. Some people treat Hulk Hogan like a superhero growing up, they know that he's just a
Mhm.
character. But sometimes that character is used for the sense of entertainment or distraction
Yeah.
from what they're dealing with in everyday
Yeah.
life. And that in some kind of psychological way it actually works. And that's why it's amazing today. I'm being a nerdy guy, they got me looking at the bigger picture, how it was able to be established and how it becomes something that no matter what you do, it will be here decades later or a century later.
Yeah. Yeah. Or is it really
That's my
a
point of
simply
view.
a retelling of like a continuing story? I have some slides in the back. I don't have the ability to bring them to the floor. If one of you or Pete can bring up those slides. So again, I kind of just did a cross section of just comparisons. Now, to Jedi Mike's point earlier, there have been people who have made these messianic comparisons between Superman and Jesus. Rightly or wrongly, or some people call it blasphemy, but these themes have been picked on. I mean, just the basic story: the Father sends the Son to Earth to be a light for humanity. Again, and the writers of Superman originally were, I believe they were Jewish writers, and certainly, the Judeo-Christian faith centers around this idea of a Messiah to come to save and to rescue
Correct.
people. And I remember even Superman Returns. I remember there were scenes. I'm watching the film, and when he's getting beat up, and he gets pierced in the side with the shard of kryptonite, it seems like they were going in on that theme of again this sort of crucified or this messianic figure. So that's always, in my view, has always been a part of Superman that's been brought up. And then you also have, for example, the Norse gods. I mean, obviously, North myth is thousands of years old, and this is certainly something that Marvel at some point decided, well, what if they weren't necessarily took that mythology and then made it into a very popular comic book series with the Marvel, with the Asgardians. And in the movies, they don't look at themselves as gods necessarily, but it's just another alien race that had interaction with Earth. But again, it also talks to that question: if we did ever meet super powered beings that did things that we didn't do, would we worship them as such? And it seems like in that mythology, whether it be MCU mythology or what have you, that's what happened. They came down and people worship them as gods or whatnot, and there was that mythology that kind of came out of that. So again, it's basically the past being reshaped and formed into a present mythology, as my man Eric was saying earlier, that still continues. These stories of these beings, they still stay with us, even though they were initially indigenous to Norway and Norwegian area, and now popular around the world. Looking at again so I'm going back, Wonder Woman, the Greek mythology and all those gods, Hercules and these figures, same thing. We're taking these mythologies of these ancient beings and we're putting them into a modern context that a lot of us embrace. That it's not just limited to Greece or Norwegian or what have you. It's like these figures are enjoyed, and for a lot of us, we probably didn't have any interest in learning Greek mythology or Norse mythology or Judeo-Christian mythology until the first thing, you might have read a comic book as a kid before you even picked up a religious text or scripture, and it might have been something that you might have thought maybe bridged the gap for you to have a better understanding of these mythical figures, and depending on your faith system, these historical figures or what have you. But so it's like we keep telling the same story, just in a different, just like in a different venue or different audience. And then
Paul,
of
let me
course
cut you off for 1 second here,
Yeah,
really
thanks.
fast.
Go for
So, if you remember, before the Olympic gods, we had the Titans, right?
Mhm.
So after the Titans, we had the Olympic gods, and now after the Olympic gods, we have action figures, comic book characters. Our memories, our minds are going to evolve over time.
Right.
So, like Troy was this incredible warrior, but he had one equipped heel. Keyword heel. So he shoot him in the heel. What's the chance of him getting hit in the heel? 1 in 1,000. But I got him. Boom,
Right.
that guy.
Right.
Well, look at the other guy. Can't remember which good character was. Who he was strong as Hercules, but all his strength was in his hair. Once he cut his hair off, he took his power away. Thank you, Rob. But Olympus, this not Olympus, the sea, the ocean is underwater. I can't remember the name. Atlanta.
Oh, Poseidon, I guess.
No,
Poseidon.
no, the city Atlantis.
Atlantis, right?
Yeah, the city is incredible, but everyone who lives there has some incredible minds and powers.
Mhm.
Sounds like we're trying to go to Mars and all this stuff. Like, think of that, just different ways, reverse.
Yeah. But it
Well-
seems like as the society advances, like you said, these stories and myths have been with us for thousands of years. It's like as we've quote unquote advanced. Now, again, depending on your political persuasion or
But
your
Let me
view of the
throw
world, I don't know
one
if we're
last
advancing or
nugget.
going backwards. I
But
don't
let's
know.
not forget,
Yeah.
the city of Atlantis has been an ongoing debate if that city actually exists or it's a folklore.
Okay, I'll
Right.
give you that, David. Let me throw a last nugget here. All right, Spartan 300s. As I said, okay, that was a comic book story. Was it really? No. Education, guys, really fast. The 300 warriors, it's a true story. 300 Spartans actually marched down and fought them. They got massacred, of course. But the way they showed it in the movies, 300, was actually what happened. It's two different things. They took the idea from a real life event and turned it into what, Paul?
A myth. It became a mythical folklore type story that.
No, actually, it was a real story that actually happened.
I know,
It
but I'm
turned-
saying, but what it turned into, it became mythical, whereas the reality might have been something maybe not as dramatic.
I'll
But
give you
again,
that.
over time, and that happens with a lot of historical figures. We may attribute things to them, but when you get the real history, it may not be as grand or that we might have made it up to be. But that's what oftentimes happen. Things, actual events can become things that become bigger. But I'm just saying. But it seems like we also, as we advance as people, we bring these mythologies with us. It's just, it seems like now comic books seems to be the new mythology, in which how we still connect to stories that are thousands of years old. mean, Judeo-Christianity, at least 4 or 5,000 years old, but we still through, these stories, whether you believe in this stuff or not, it seems like we're still connected to these things, and it still captures our interest. And quite frankly, in some ways, some people would say captures our worship. Because again, I mean, worship is a lot of times about what you put your time and energy and resources into. How big? We've been to Comic-Con. How big is Comic-Con? How much money do people spend on items at Comic-Con? How much time do you do reading comic books or stories or graphic novels or what have you? What price tag do you put on your fandom? We still seem to carry these things along with us all the time. And so the question I'm always asking is like, why, what is driving that in us, that we have such almost like a need? Because we're not thinking about necessarily new stories. It seems like we're just sort of retelling old stories, but we're telling them in a sort of a modern context or a more exciting context. But again, it's essentially the same people. We just kind of fleshed them out a little bit more. And so the question I'm always asking is, does this have to do with maybe there's a primal need within human beings for a godlike figure or presence? So let's just go back here. So again, we had, the Infinity Gauntlet. The idea is whoever had all 5 Infinity Stones, you essentially had the power of God. I mean, 6. I'm sorry, 6.
There's 6.
You essentially were God if you had these stones. We talk about in Christendom, God is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. Well, if you got the Infinity Stones, you're basically God. And obviously, there's always been this desire also to be God, which is why Thanos is kind of like that character. He wanted to sort of usurp and possess the power to do what he did. And again, we gravitate towards those stories. So it's like for a lot of people, even an atheist may not necessarily believe in God, but he may love the Infinity Stone story. An atheist may not believe in heaven and hell, but we have no problem talking about astral planes. If you look at Black Panther, where the souls go to die in this astral plane, could that be a real thing? And even now, with science, when we talk about things like how many dimensions are there? We live within a 4-dimensional universe, but science is saying there might be up to 10. And then once you start bringing in string theory and quarks and all these different physical sciences that are being birthed today that people don't know a whole lot about, but it's there, could just simply just be another plane of existence that in our limited understanding, we may call it heaven or hell or something, but is there another place? Because the atheists may say, oh, this doesn't have, you just die and you just go to dust or whatever. But again, second law of thermodynamics says that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It just goes into another form. So what happens? Maybe when you die, you go into some astral place in another form somewhere. Maybe one day we may scientifically prove that. But these stories, these comics, these myths, these what have yous, there's something that draws it to us. And I'm not sure if necessarily these things are just coincidence or just because they're children's stories or because even the wow factor, which is cool in and of itself. But no matter how far we go as a species, these themes and these stories seem to be with us. Jedi, what's your take on that? And are you seeing how, at least what I'm seeing, there's this connection here that may go beyond just fairy tales or what have you? Do you think there might be something more there that is the reason why we keep bringing these stories with us throughout time?
Because again, it's also just a form of because I think stories do have weight and power. Just as you read the Bible once, it's not like oh yeah, I read the Bible when I was 12 and then I don't read it ever again. No, this is a continuous thing that you can like read, because it is in different parts of your life that maybe there's a perspective that now that you might have gotten when you're younger to now you're older, that now you're dissecting some of the stories within the Bible about and applying it to your current life. Like again, I'll use an example with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. I watched that film as a child. I watched that film as a teenager, and I watched that film as an adult. All three times, and I've seen the film
Right.
more
Right.
times than that. Just but I'm just saying that they all apply differently in my life when I saw them. But it was the same story. The story never changed, but how I received it, how I perceived the story, I get something new out of it, and because I'm now in the personal experience of my life with that. Now, am I putting Peter Parker, Spider-Man in the position of a Messiah figure? No. However, I am just putting it in position of how these stories, like the Bible, is that influential even after years and years later, when you're seeing different characters in different films or shows highlighting certain themes that we have seen before, but just in a new lens. And I feel like also as generations, as like the modern audience is changing, because again, like even what you see how with superhero films, the the old superhero films would not work today. Some of them are staples in time, but some of them they have not aged
Mhm.
well. Let's be honest. However, when it comes with our own, with I don't want to say keep going back to Christianity, but 'cause
Sure.
that's the only
Absolutely.
personal experience I have with it. But uh, the way how preaching has been, preaching in the 80s and then in the 60s can be different than preaching, and in the
Mhm.
21st century, beyond and everything. It's just because times have changed. However,
Mhm.
the word of God has not changed. The scripture has not changed. It's just the fact of how we are interpreting, and also the theology, how people are receiving it now is a different lens as well. So I feel like there is a um there definitely is a connection even then, as we're seeing films now, like again changing into more of the philosophical questions that are now we're that seeing a 3-hour film and questioning about morality or of a higher calling, or talking about theology from the messianic influences from Dune,
Mhm.
and looking at that in terms of that. It's the same thing. Those themes still apply in a
Mhm.
science fiction story. So I feel that there definitely is connection there. However, to a point that why we say we're still seeing some of the same things, I think it's also there's always in every, I won't say 5 or 10 years, you have outliers that basically break the mold of the traditional form of storytelling. Even again, even in the religion, how people will perceive the scriptures in a different way now, or how they will interpret something will be like, well, I read that scripture a million times, and then you said something and it's completely I
Yeah.
see this in a new light, right? So I think again, those are important, because again, we're going back to moral compass. The having faith, knowing what's right or wrong, how to be a better individual, the
Right.
best individual you can be, right? Also rejecting your own selfish desires, those things, and then even then going into the other genres, like with Star Wars, it's the same thing. Light side, dark side. Those themes in literature is the same thing. Even in Shakespeare, those things are very, very apparent, and they haven't basically the birth
Right.
foundations of storytelling. Is just now in different lenses, and because of certain creators, when they want to try to expand that type of uh
Mhm.
mindset and that type of idea
Mhm.
into a different generation, because every day times are going to be changing, and how this current generation today are receiving these stories in new lens, whether it's in short form content, in cartoon shows and animation
Yeah.
on children's
Right.
television, stuff like that, right? So those things are changing, and yeah, I just think that
Awesome.
there
Awesome.
definitely is a
David, how
connection
about
there.
you? Are you seeing the connection? And what do you think? What do you think about especially what I just showed here? This is there like a longing or a need for these stories? Because again, a lot of them sound familiar. I mean, I think what Jedi was saying, when, like even with Spider Man, I mean, the main theme of Spider-Man, the biggest quote ever is, with great power comes great responsibility. How
I
many
agree.
times has that story been told or shown, either in a positive story or in a negative story, in a religious book of some kind or some other aspect of human life? It's like there's these truths sometimes that we see that's imparted within the comic books themselves, but they sound familiar. Yeah, I might have heard that in Sunday school somewhere, some story, something. But comics seem to do it in a way that seems to be more appreciated, at least by more modern audiences. But what's your take on these connections to
Um,
between? Go
that
ahead.
that would be a very good question because when you listen to that phrase, you can, if you're someone who's of faith and have a deep level of understanding, not only just faith but also history, you can almost tell that phrase would have been mentioned in a different way or a different wording throughout time of
Mhm,
itself. But how I want to put it this way, we in a different society right now. There had been many different levels of society throughout time. And I always ask myself the question, if you were the yet the year of society, will you have any such thing like comic book? Would it exist? I doubt it. But there'll be folklore, there'll be storytelling that'll be going past from generation to generation.
mhm,
Either in the thought mythology, the Greek mythology, in the African mythology, the Chinese, the Japanese, it's always something that have been passed down as a way either of entertainment or as a way of reference. But when we look at the present time, as someone who's also a person of faith, I'm a Christian, but I will not consider myself a typical Christian because
mhm,
that'll be another discussion at itself. But as I observe things, I have to be paying attention to detail. Sometimes I wonder if people are using comic book as a conduit to replace their faith or have it to be a mean of believing as something more value than that of their faith either because this has been going on for who knows for how long because there have been a question of faith going on whereby we have so many denominations already after this.
mhm,
We have so many different type of religion.
mhm,
Then you mentioned earlier there are people who are atheists, may not believe in the Bible, they may not believe in Buddha or any such religion, but either they don't believe in comic book character.
mhm,
They can build multiple philosophy behind it, even though such philosophy is not even standing to begin with. It doesn't have a solid foundation or a solid root, but it take a particular space whereby you gotta ask yourself what the root cause of such character being created for what purpose,
mhm,
what is the meaning behind it. One person that created for one particular meaning, but after as time progressed, it ended up becoming multiple meanings to what it be. So when I look at this way, I have to be careful and cautious about not let it cross path or cross a lane where it doesn't belong. Because as a child, like you say, as a child, you do childish thing. As an adult, you got to put the way child thing and do adult thing.
mhm,
Now, people call it comic books is meant for kids, but at the same time, it's not. So when you look at anime, Japanese animation, it's not really a cartoon because there are multiple genres within anime. Which we have a podcast on Wednesday. We broke that one down.
mhm,
So when you look at this, comparing God's superhero or deity, you gotta ask, where do these such characters fall in your personal life?
mhm,
Are they the source of entertainment? Are they the source of faith or a source of distraction? Or is something that is relatable to you? Because when I saw that my presentation when you had Jesus Christ on the cross and Superman on a pole getting wrapped around, who know what kind of rope they have on him, because if you were to scratch him, he can break that off regardless any time of the day. But what was the purpose of that comparative? Because I've seen that in the church. I used to be a usher at one point, and there was a suggestion they don't believe in Halloween, but to find an alternative for kids, they will call it superhero night. Whereas I was not too much of a fan of such idea because I knew as time progressed it would end up merging back to what you were trying to fight again, and you're not gonna find yourself realizing that you just played yourself fall into that loophole.
Mhm.
And that was something we were practicing for a period of time because I know other churches were trying to do the same exact thing, and I knew very, very well if you don't understand the true nature of such holiday or such thing that been created, then you fall into the trap that have been put in place in front of you without even understanding its root cause or its history.
Mhm.
So me as an individual, I'm not too much affected by character, even though it's entertainment to me, it's interesting, but there are some people out there take it far beyond
Mhm.
that aspect of what it's supposed to be and make it something much more than what it is.
Gotcha.
Which is which is very telling, but I can't call it fascinating, but it's something that will let you understand how the human mind operates. What do people do when they go through something like because everybody is um Black Men Unfit had a show on Friday. Every man is a broken boy. That's obvious because no one is perfect. That's not rocket science. But for everyone who go through any trauma of life, what do they do to replace or to mask such trauma? How do they overcome their everyday life? These things have become a means and a mechanism where they have been successful in making a lot of money.
Mhm.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
There's no argument about that.
Yeah.
But in this conversation, to me, I could see myself as an observer or a student, just observing what it is, enjoying what it is, but not allowing it to go past what it's supposed to be.
Right.
Get what I'm coming from?
Yeah. For sure. All right, Angriel, why don't you get in? What's your view on these? Are you seeing these threads so over time, or how do you approach it?
Absolutely. Especially with what EJN said a while back that comics are now our modern mythology. Um, and look at where when it when did the superheroes start to come out? Seeing in the comics, I mean, the Silver Age was right around the time of World War II, right
Yeah.
before, right in between World War One and World War II, and um, they went away for a little bit, then they came back in the late 40s and early 50s. But even before that, technically, science fiction wasn't invented until the late 19th century with
Mhm.
Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Um, she's credited with being the first one to write a science fiction story. Um, and that in of itself sparked a new form of this modern mythology. Uh, and if we continue to go backwards through time, looking at it, as time has progressed, our oral history went from sitting around the fire as a tribe or maybe as a village and hearing stories told by the elders, and then that's how a lot of things got passed down from generation to generation, this oral history.
Mhm.
And now we jump forward to the 21st century where, we don't have, groups of people following one religion because they're in this one part of the world and they have, um, over here, they have different stories. There are certain things that are, interweaved through our different, religions and mythologies, and that one of those themes is a great flood. In
Mhm.
every single religion, every single mythology, there's talk of a great flood,
Mhm.
and things like that continue on. Now we're in our modern age where everybody, I mean, right now we're all of us are in North America, and there could be people in Europe or Asia watching this show, and you know these movies, these comic books, they get published and created, and then they're translated to other languages, and the stories are retold over there.
Mhm.
Same basic storyline, but but the parallels, um, it's uncanny, and
Yeah.
I think really what it is taking these stories that have continued to pass down through the generations. They're just authors get, writer's block and need a jolt, and so what do? They reach back, maybe they pull something from mythology, or maybe they pull something from the Catholic language or Catholic religion, or they pull something from, you know, um, something else.
Mhm.
And I'm sure if we went back and looked at every single major hero, we could find the connection. Like you were saying earlier, the allegory between Superman and Jesus Christ. Yeah, yeah, it's just uncanny. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I do. I definitely do.
Great points. Great points. Pete.
A while back, I asked a question to my priest for the Casadino. Of course, he's gonna answer like a regular priest will. No, it's no relationship with him. So I was looking at Jesus one day, a picture of him, of course, and I looked at Zeus. They look very similar in a way, almost. Same thing with Odin and Zeus. Not like the similar, like, oh, he's a man. Both have long hair. Both have beards. Huh. You see where I'm going with this, Paul?
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's also the cultures as well. You kind of draw what they say. Sometimes you draw God in your own image, so to speak. So, um, how men looked at themselves, like what they have drawn Odin or whatever, with a nice bald head and clean shaven, just to be different from every other man out there that had something. That would have been pretty cool, actually. But you know, but again, beards have always been attributed to wisdom and intelligence and things of that nature, and long hair and so those were certainly trends of the day. So again, you want to attribute, put those attributes on whatever character that that is. If you want to have that person being great or powerful or knowing or wise or what have you. So it doesn't surprise me that with a lot of those figures, you would have that kind of imagery drawn for those figures, but also in part that we're doing, that back then that's how most men looked. I mean, most men weren't clean shaven.
Okay.
Maybe
I'll
the
give you that. I'll
Egyptians or
give you that.
something, but yeah.
I mean,
I'll let you go with that one. I'll give you that. And I just thought they're very similar. The culture thing, I never thought of that. But there are a lot of similar analogies out there, like the powers of different cultures. Zeus and Odin have similar powers.
Mhm.
Like the Almighty. They're both kings.
Mhm.
And there are other ones, the Egyptians and so on. And I've had a hard time saying, okay, it's coincidence. I don't think it's coincidence. I think it's more something was out there, or somebody got the idea, wrote the story, and everybody kind of like changed the word of it around it. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like, I asked somebody once before if Hercules was a real thing. I was a kid. I was back in Greece. The answer I got was Hercules was a man that was known out there, strong and everything, not like the movies and shows
Mhm.
or the myth. He went through stuff. He defeated a lion and like normal things, but not to the extreme that he was Zeus's bastard kid.
Mhm.
I can believe that.
So now, right, yeah. So the story gets embellished over
It wore
time, or
down.
the character evolves over time. Because
Yeah,
even
or
Superman, right? I mean, Superman didn't fly initially, right? He leaped over things. He wasn't as powerful as he is now, where he can like move worlds and stuff. I mean, So again, there's always this kind of evolution. It starts with an idea, and then it just kind of it just kind of mushrooms into something that's bigger and grander.
Better
But
example, Batman. He used to run around with a firearm.
yeah,
And that's what his choice of weapon was back in the day. I
Mhm.
just don't remember he ever used it in any comic books. I probably don't remember.
Right.
In the very beginning. Yeah.
You would
He
have to
did.
go
He
back to
did.
you would have to go back to the originals. Well, oh, and by the way, just to get some context, because Angry Elf had mentioned it, says here, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, the first published comic book was actually The Phantom, and it came out in February 17th of 1936. That was really like the first, but to his point, again, right
Yeah.
around World War II or just before then. It started with him, and then I think Superman came out in 38, and I think Batman
Mhm.
came out, I think, in 41. Captain America. Um, uh, when did that come out? Was that was in the 40s also?
Captain
Or
Yeah, because there's a famous cover, a couple issues after Captain America came out, where
Mhm.
he's punching Adolf Hitler. It looks like he
Yeah,
broke
yeah.
into,
Hydra.
Germany's.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
actually my
Hydro.
favorite. That's actually my favorite scene from Captain America: First Avenger when they're doing the Star Spangled Man piece,
Yep.
and then the comic comes out, and it's that cover
Yep.
from
Yep.
that one that you're talking about. So it's just yeah. So that's really when it kind of came into mass. But again, before, I mean, what did kids do before 1936? You probably read Tolkien
Mhm.
or some other, again, a historic, or you read like the Three Musketeers, or you read some other
Yeah.
mythology or something. But
Grimm's
there was
Tales.
exactly. So I mean, there was always something to to keep your interest, but it certainly it got you moving certain ways. But I want to go back to also what Rob said as far as again the connections. I actually found this
Yep.
website that this comic book religion .com, and they
Mhm.
basically do exactly what Angry Elf was saying. You can scroll on the left side. You can scroll down and pick a religion,
Mhm.
and it'll give you a listing of all of the for a particular character, what the religious context is, and
Yeah.
then the publisher who came out with it, whether it be Marvel or DC or some indie or something like that, it gives it to you for every type of figure that you could think of. So again, Hindu characters, Jewish
Mhm.
characters, even Muslim and African. What David was saying earlier, African religion, obviously Black Panther. Storm
Mhm.
from X-Men. So it kind of is a pretty cool reference for anyone who's looking for these type of connections between either mythology or religions, or and how they've made their way into these characters. What I also found interesting, they had a Mormon one, and I had to remember
Mhm.
that for all of us who watch anything by Greg Larson,
Mhm.
Battlestar Galactica was
Yep.
heavy on Mormon religion. I mean, especially when you talk about the one with the gods and the angelic beings and stuff that came straight out of Mormonism.
Mhm.
And so I think for a lot of these the creators of these comics, they have gone to religion, or influencers or whatever, they have gone back to their foundations, what they
Mhm.
were brought up on. And maybe they might have thought, well, how can I bring um this sort of belief into something, into a story, or into a time that people would may embrace? Because I mean, you might have been a kid, be like, oh, do I really have to go to Sunday school and hear about David and Goliath again? Well, maybe, or hear about Samson and pushing on the columns and coming down. But maybe you might want to read about Hercules or some other superpowered person
Yeah.
who may have had similar issues, or similar uh, 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 things they had to go through. But but again, it was just another way to kind of keep uh, the truths. And I think I go back to this as well, that these truths that are being we're in the battle between comic book heroes and video game characters. That's another hangout show, Marcus. But thank you for coming. Thank you for coming on tonight. But I think where I really think these connections go is the truths that they convey.
Mhm.
You know, like I said earlier, Spider-Man. I mean, forget the villains and the characters and all that. That's almost secondary to the condition that he finds himself in.
Right.
You know, we talked about on Thursday's show about being, you know, manning up, and what does it mean to be a man. And me, Dave, and Pete talk about you know, having to take care of our parents
Right.
in their old age and things of that nature, and stepping up and taking on those responsibilities. Well, again, for a lot of people, they don't want those responsibilities, to be honest. If you got a bunch of siblings in a family, if you got 6 siblings, maybe 1 or 2 are the ones who are most intimately involved in parental care. Everybody else is just kind of comes at the holidays and then bounces later. You know, so I think a lot of times, you know, the truths that are being conveyed in these stories is something that connects us, because it gets back down to, again, fundamentals. You know, what is right and what is wrong, or what is wise and what is not. And it is about sacrifice. If you're a father, if you're a husband, if you are a, you know, caring for the elderly or whatever, yeah, sometimes you do have to make some personal sacrifices for the better good, or for what is honorable, even though it doesn't seem pleasant. But how many times have we seen superheroes in situations where they have to make these moral choices, and sometimes it doesn't even look like there's a right or wrong choice. It's just you know, a wiser choice versus a non-wise choice.
Yeah.
So again, I think we relate as human beings, because I think they speak to the human condition in ways that that certainly I think the religions do, but maybe with everything else that maybe religions that may come with it, maybe it's like, okay, we kind of get rid of the religious stuff that may, especially in the 2025, may not have necessarily any relative anything relative in today's world, but the truths are still there. And that if comics are still going to battle that, even in today where you don't have, as Jedi Mike was saying earlier, you don't necessarily have, just like wrestling, you don't necessarily have good guys and bad guys anymore, right? Especially the Attitude Era. If anything, they took away that kind of binary look of the world. And now it's just about people just struggling to find that. Well, I think, again, a lot of people are in that kind of space today. So I think these things that comics are constantly getting to is the heart of the human being. Our needs, our issues, our wants, our desires, our fears. And they speak to us in that way that religion, and maybe at one time, maybe did, but for some people, maybe not as much. And again, and that's why I think a lot of times I've heard sermons, I'm sure David's heard sermons too, where a superhero character is used as a subject in the sermon to make the point that was always there in the Bible or whatever text that you're going to. The story's always been there, but it gives it a fresh perspective that then, you know, maybe younger audiences maybe connect to. So I've always seen that certainly in the comics. But this one more, I have one more slide, and I'll take the slide off the you can take the slide off the screen. But one to look at another perspective that I think Peter raised earlier is that this idea that, you know, maybe our desire for superheroes maybe isn't necessarily a connection with a god or a deity or what have you. Maybe it's just the opposite of that. The idea of a god necessarily being restrictive, and that man's desire to overcome his limits, and that maybe these superheroes are such that they give an opportunity to think beyond what quote unquote God had placed on us. And I thought about philosophy. So here you got like Friedrich Nietzsche. You say Nietzsche or Nietzsche. I never could quite get the pronunciation of that. But he wrote about this idea of this Übermensch, which if you translate it, you know, a lot of people say it's Superman. And that's like the idea that, again, this personal development, and self-overcoming. It represents those who create their own values, embrace life's challenges, transcends conventional morality. The Ubermensch is not a perfect being, but a dynamic, creative individual who molds themselves and their environments to fulfill their potential. So it seems like he comes at it from the standpoint of this idea of we want to exceed. And it's interesting because that always seems to be the role of the villain in a lot of these comics, right? It's always you got this guy, he wants to be powerful, but he can't. So he either stumbles across something or gets corrupted by power somehow. And then they get these delusions of grandeur that they need to kind of overcome the world and subject to its will versus being the subject of its will. So this idea of overcoming, rejecting, again, outdated moral frameworks, this could be, a reason why, or at least what drives a lot of villains, that they feel constricted by, they don't want to live by the norms. They'd rather set the norms rather than not. So I want to get people's perspective here as well. We can start with P and go the opposite direction. What do you think of this in terms of this niche philosophy? If you go back and look at Conan the Barbarian, the whole idea of the riddle of steel was, steel, flesh is stronger than steel. And, me being able to call a woman off the perch and to her death or whatever, that's what true power is about. And that's what, what real men seek. It's not our weapons. It's our ability to control things and control people. That is at play. We can take this off the screen and then, bring everybody back and have, have a discussion on this. But this idea that the superheroes or supervillains, for that matter, do they in fact represent this sort of niche? I'll say niche. I may be niche or whatever. Again, I butcher it every time I say it. But this kind of philosophy. So is it the whole God versus superhero? Is it really the idea of God versus man at the end of the day? Which again, it goes back to an outdated story. It's like man wanted to be God. If you eat the fruit of this tree from the fruit of knowledge,
right,
I'll be God too. And is that kind of driving? So go ahead, Mike.
Yeah.
What's your views on that?
Well, there's also, I'll take one literal representation going to X-Men. There's a character called Apocalypse who has the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which is also in scripture. And while it's his, his motto, what he stands for is basically the strongest will survive, the strongest will prevail. And also views all of the mutant, kind as his children, because basically he's saying he's the first one mutant to ever exist. But yeah, so he basically is literally called represented as a messiah figure. We even with the X-Men community with that, because again, and with his 4 horsemen of apocalypse, again, it just verbatim what in scripture. There was a line in X-Men Apocalypse that they were saying that, either he got it from the Bible or the Bible got it from him, that type of line there. But like even then going into the there's definitely because I have I noticed some people in the comments are saying this though, like I do have certain issues in terms of how when certain comic book films will try to use biblical references, but I think take it out of context, which is a whole nother thing, which is why this is, there's definitely a danger in terms of how you are interpreting scripture and then translating that into a film using these characters, which also has a huge appeal to children, because children are also the most vulnerable minds out there. So and even though I see that as an opportunity to give biblical references within different medias and forms of storytelling, I just also want to highlight that that every biblical reference that's made in these films and comic films are accurate, nor some of them we could call blasphemy if we want to be honest. But yeah, with those certain villains, with that, there definitely is that theme there of paralleling that to scripture with his character. But yeah, again, repeat, but even then, at the same time, I think in each generation you're kind of seeing the deconstruction of said villains into now when we having films talking about quote unquote anti-heroes or villain based films like the Joker. One of my favorite uh, books and scriptures is Book of Matthews. And you kind of going to or not and not just Matthew, but
Mhm.
also First and Second Samuel. First, Second Samuel's deal
Mhm.
also with David. Um, and you're seeing the rise of David in terms of him, taking out, Goliath and everything like that, and now becoming king and stuff. And then also you've seen the fall
Mhm.
of his character, and sending off a woman he wanted to be with, whatever, to her husband to war, and trying to just so way he can
Mhm.
actually sleep with her and everything like that, and then basically lead to his demise. It's like
Mhm.
a rise and fall of men. And I feel like with that, it's kind of showing in these comic book films or these properties showing how these villains came to be. Are they, actual true villain and demonic or in their nature, or they're just misunderstood heroes, or they just they basically are the result of their own demise of rejecting not being fully consumed by
Right.
their own flesh, metaphorically and literally speaking. Um, and I feel like with those films now we're seeing that we're not trying to say that we're glorifying the villain, but more I think it's important to actually highlight the dangers when you're not having a strong moral compass of what's good and wrong, and or more importantly when bad things
Mhm.
happen to you, how do you respond? Going
Mhm.
to the book of Job, how, hey, you want to talk about villain origin story
Yeah.
that could have happened.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
the worst could happen to
Yeah.
this man, you know. But he decided, no, I'm not going to do that. And again, it's representing morality of good versus bad. And I feel like with villains, these films, the villain is kind of showing, hey, any of us, especially aside from God, us as people, children of God, people on this earth, when we also have flesh, where our fleshly nature it definitely is rooted in evil and demonic, is that we too can become the very thing who
Mhm.
we call is the bad guy, right? Again, you go into the lines of the Joker. We all can go insane.
Yeah.
All it takes is one bad day, right? So it's like when uh on a religious point of view, do I choose, God because it's easy, or do I choose God because I know it's the right thing to do, and I'm taking the more difficult path. I'm not trying to dive into sin, not trying to dive into my emotions, and not trying to have my heart when the
Mhm.
heart said the heart can deceive you. When some things that you can be consumed by that type of corruption that the enemy want to use on you. So I think some of these villains, there are just archetypes of like, okay, you have grace, understanding of understanding their origin, of how
Mhm.
they come to be for some of them, right? Um, and but at the same time, it's also a reminder, hey, what can I do in my life? The choices and decisions that I make, so the way I don't become that bad guy, I don't become that villain. And because you don't know, you might be the
Mhm.
villain, someone else's story. If
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's that's why I feel like when I look at those archetypes, that's why I think
Yeah, and again, especially what I think Black Panther might have been probably the most provocative, because again, I've heard so many discussions on, was Killmonger right? Well, Killmonger was right. So, again, you've had those combos that have really changed the dynamic in terms of how certain villains have been viewed over time, and even like Thanos, he literally believed he was doing a good thing, you know, and so that. But go ahead, David. You can take it
I
from
want
there.
to
What
speak on
you
that part when you
Yeah.
mentioned the Black Panther because it's equated a 3 or 4 way conversation. One is a cultural aspect concerning African American and Africa. Two, it is spiritual, whereby it is another third realm kind of thing. The third one is more a clash between faith and religion. Because one, if anyone went within African culture, Black Panther was based on idols philosophy based on the region. Remember, I mentioned the African mythology based on
Mhm,
different African countries,
mhm.
and something is considered to be what the terminology called traditionalists. They don't believe in falling into the realm of being a Christian or a Muslim, but they believe in their own mythology that have been passed down for over 1,000+ years, what
Right,
they know and understand.
right.
And that movie itself, it did that to a degree because I remember when I came out of the movie theater and someone was asking me I was about Killmonger. I say, what Killmonger argument when he introduced who he really is, there is a conflict in that thought process whereby it will take a couple of sections of conversation to really understand the deep level concerning that because it was a major Easter egg right there and there of identity. And that thought process, it was something like I was like, the producer is slick with it, but I get the big picture where it comes to. It's just that it's not a simple conversation just to one and done it. There's multiple angles, and that is very unique to behind it. That what made the movie so fascinating because even though if you watch it over and over, after 10 to 100 times, you start to scratch your head. Is Killmonger right or was he wrong? If he right, but what area is he right? If he
Yeah.
wrong, what area is he wrong? Is there a contradiction in his statement? If not, why there's not a contradiction?
Mhm.
That kind of thing, it make you want to wonder.
Well, it's to me, it's a higher conversation.
Bingo.
Like I said it's just not binary. It's like, yeah, he brought up some real stuff. That's yeah, this is so again, sometimes our conversations we ask in the gray area a lot of times, and we ask certainly when we talk to our vets, and we always ask the question, what is the gray area that you found in your because you might have went in one way thinking, yeah, America, apple pie, yeah, we're the good guys or whatever. But you get out there in the field, and Angry Elf, he talked about it. He put it better than I can ever put it. But yeah, when you're out there, there's certain stuff you're just gonna have to do some stuff. I'm angry. What did you say? I mean,
Mhm.
you put it better than I could have ever said it.
It was a couple months ago, but yeah, it's basically like there's the right way, there's the wrong way, and then there's going to be the way that's going
Yeah.
to get you home, and it's going to be, you know, one of it could be it could be thought as part of the morals or part of the limitations, but the rules of engagement,
Mhm.
the ROE, and you could almost, um, I wore this shirt for a reason. I kind of feel to a certain degree, just to explain where I was
Mhm.
going wearing this shirt, that um, our service members and our first responders, but mainly the soldiers that I worked with, I've seen some amazing feats. You know, guys doing. Maybe you could say it was the adrenaline or the situation we're in, but I've seen stuff, and to circle back, yes, there's points in time when these folks are doing amazing things that we have we have a conflict of moral. What's more moral, saving the day or bringing
Mhm.
your guys home? You know, and that's where that quote unquote gray area
Yeah.
comes.
Rob, I've been meaning to ask you a
You know,
question. I asked this a lot to the vets, and I didn't ask it on a gray area because we ran out of time. Tonight's a
yeah.
great opportunity to ask this question. When these bullets are flying across your head, you're seeing your buddy dying, your best friend getting shot 13 times, whatever. Do you question, what the hell guy's doing or if he exists or anything like that?
I mean, as an afterthought, there's
Not during a firefight, obviously.
yeah.
You're not
So
gonna be like, oh,
so
hold on,
I've
hold on,
been
hold on, guys, stop shooting at me. Why are you doing this to me right now? Not like that. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, no. Oh, I do. And to a certain degree, I felt because I was several circumstances where I somehow, some way, walked away. Like, and the only thing I can think of is I had two guardian angels, my grandfathers who both served in World War II. Um, they were protecting me. Um, you know, so that's the only way I could rationalize some of the stuff. So, um, but yeah, I mean, there are definite, I served with guys who are more religious than I am. I mean, I believe there's a God and everything, but they were way more religious, and having some of those conversations sometimes could be
Mhm.
very
Mhm.
interesting. Why is this happening? How did we end up here? And there always seems to be um, the common theme: the evils that men do. Is it an evil dictator, an evil, somebody who didn't have a good moral compass, or was it some form of greed or
Mhm.
corruption? I mean, in some way, shape, or form, almost every conflict, we'll just keep it to the modern era. There is some sort of either major differences in ideology, somebody's going off, doing something that no normal person would think is right, or the conflict of governments. One government wants to take something, and another comes
Mhm.
in and stops it. And then there's greed,
Mhm.
straight up oil or
Mhm.
land. So
And there are multiple
yeah.
reasons why people do fucked up things in the world. Why are you guys going to go after WMDs? Did I say that right, Rob? WMDs, right? Yeah. It's so
WMDs.
many
Yep.
reasons why you're in a different country. You don't speak the language and you're fighting a war. You don't know what the fuck you're doing down there. You know what I'm saying? There's so many
Yeah.
reasons that we, as average little taxpayers, voters, will never understand why this shit going down. Can you agree with that, Rob, please?
I mean, yeah. There. I mean, I call it the dam mission, only because we went to a dam looking for WMDs. In fact, we didn't even know what we were doing when we got sent out. But yeah, we didn't know what
Mhm.
we were really
And when you
doing
get those orders,
sometimes.
you don't
I mean,
question them, you just follow them.
yeah, well, I mean, for the most part, yes. I mean, there we won't get into the
No, no,
minutia
no.
of it, but
That's not for
yes,
the
for the
show.
most part. So, but yeah, it's yeah, pretty much follow your orders. But yeah, I mean, that damn mission, we went to a dam. We arrive. There's folks from two other UN nations, and they're legitimately diving into this body of water. We were on a dam, that's why I called it the dam mission. But anyways, they were diving, looking to see if these supposed WMDs had been placed in the bottom of this lake or pond or whatever it was. But yeah.
Wow.
It sounds like you've seen a pretty good. You've seen a lot enough thing to keep a average man awake at night. Sometimes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You don't go to combat for 54 months and not come out with some memories, some good and some bad.
For
Yeah.
sure. Pete, any comments on I guess that last block we were talking about as far as um, the niche philosophy of sort of overcoming um, limitations? Could that be driving?
Absolutely.
Certainly, yeah.
I think man's limitations
I
is
mean,
definitely a part of the factor. Like, can you lift the car? Bodybuilding, great example. People start bodybuilding because they want to look a certain way to break the limits of the human body.
Mhm.
You're a bodybuilder. You're a trainer, right, Paul? So
Well, yeah,
can
and
can we agree on this?
a lot of guys. I mean, we've all seen the classic comic ad, right? The guy's getting sand kicked in his face by the bully or whatever. Then he gets Charles Atlas dynamic tension program, and in the 6 months he becomes a real muscle man or whatever, and he's able to now he can turn the table on the bully, and now he gets the girls and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's that thing. And again, if you ever watch Pumping Iron, it's like Mike Katz in that documentary, or even Lou Ferrigno for that matter. You know, he was a kid, was deaf growing up, and so again, bodybuilding was sort of like that outlet for him, because it's also it's an isolated sport. I mean, it's not a I mean, yes, there's camaraderie sometimes, but a lot of guys, we saw when we went to the that gym opening, people they just put the hoodie on or whatever. They don't want to be seen. They just want to do their thing and kind of go unknown. They got their earplugs in. They're letting you know that, look, I don't want to be bothered. It's like that's the little world that they create for themselves,
And that's the world
so
they live in.
yeah, and so so it's for a lot of these guys, they're hermits when it comes to how they go around. Some have the can personalize. Jay Cutler, I mean, he has no problem talking and communicating with you, whatever. Some of these guys, you talk to them, it's like, whoa. I mean, it's
Actually, Paul, I'm gonna push back on that Jay Cutler comment, because the first time I met him about 8 years ago, he was actually very shy.
Mm.
He didn't like to be talking about. Maybe it was a fan thing, because he just started doing his supplement line. He just retired from bodybuilding, competing bodybuilding. So he was very shy at first. A lot of bodybuilders are very shy, believe it or not.
Oh, for sure, for sure. But I mean, the
And
fact that he's been able to build like a media brand. I mean, a lot of these guys don't go on to do that. They may shoot like training videos or whatever. They're not talking very much.
Yeah.
But Jay, he's a marketer. He has a show where he interviews people. So again, he's personable in that regard. But again, a lot of guys, again, they rather just not be seen, or only to be seen when they're on stage. But then outside of that, it's like, they won't let you into their world, so to speak, or even when you talk to them, they only talk about bodybuilding. I mean, it's like any other subject that you want to talk to them about, they're not necessarily interested in. So again, there's definitely a segment that is so singularly focused on that area. But again, part of it is driven by things. It's driven by, they might have bulimia as a kid or something, or some kind of thing, or they're mad at their dad, or whatever, or the dad left something that in the kid. And you see it sometimes even with football players, the guys who are in violent sports, boxing, it's kind of hard to grow up like a suburban, nice middle class lifestyle and be a professional boxer or MMA or whatever. It's like you got to have something in the hurt locker that you can kind of harness on and then bring that into the ring, because again, you're in a lot of ways, boxing is about scoring, hitting, and not being hit. But some guys go in and say, look, if you don't have that dog to create some damage, then maybe this isn't for you.
So it's very rare when you find somebody who's in an upper class lifestyle. Very rare, I said.
Very rare, yeah.
Very
you can
rare.
be competitive, but I'm saying, but for those kind of actions, like you can be a competitive race car driver or fencer or something like that. But
I'm talking about fighters now.
Yeah, to be a fight, right? Anything with this physical contact, football, boxing, MMA, martial art. I mean, in order to be really good at it, you got to have a dark place from which you draw in order to drive you when you don't feel like. Who wants to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning and run 5 miles? I mean, it's just a different breed of a person that does that. But that idea of overcoming barriers and limitations and to become Superman. I mean, I when I put my Superman shirt on when I'm training, sometimes it's just a mode that you get into that you want to break barriers and overcome things. That's I think it very much at heart.
It's funny you said that, Paul, because when I used to train when I was younger, and when the first Captain America, First Avenger came out, that was one of my movies I used to watch on a treadmill for 45. When I was 45-minute cardio, it gets fucking boring. It's fast, that goddamn thing. And it was before YouTube, before David, shut up. Before all that stuff came out, and so you could have downloaded videos on your phone. So I downloaded the movie to my phone. I didn't buy it illegally. I didn't pirate it. I just, I owned the DVD in a digital version, so I downloaded it to my computer and took it. So I used to watch Captain America when I was training. And when the scene, I know this doesn't sound so anti-manhood, somebody's gonna say, like, David, when he popped out of the scene when he's in the capsule, laying back and his muscles are popping, all that stuff. Like I want that fucking chest. I want
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Go back to the original what you were just saying. Is it something what we need and what we want, and we kind of without that out lotion in a way, kind of fantasize into that? Yes, I think we fantasize to be bulky, strong. Some people will never get the physique they ever wanted.
Mhm.
It could be lifestyle, work,
Right.
responsibilities.
Right. Well, even think about the
Hey,
comics themselves. I mean, like if you look at the original Superman or Batman
Mhm.
comic versus today, these guys are jacked.
Mhm.
I mean, it's almost like they have an insane level of muscularity to them, to the point where it's like it's not even
Go back
functional. But again, if you look at the original Superman, I mean, they kind of look, or they certainly the actors, George Reeves and those guys. There was
or
Adam West. I
who's
mean,
Batman? Oh God,
I
Adam
mean,
West.
none of
Thank you.
these
Yeah,
guys
they
were
they
like anybody.
yeah
They had dad bods back then. For what we call
yeah you
dad
could
bods today is what the body of a superhero was back then. Now everybody is.
yeah
If you're not Jack, you're ripped. You have to have one or the other. Yeah, you could be
yeah
jacked and ripped, but the dad bod superhero is typically not um is typically not accepted, at least in the comic, the way they're drawn.
But
And I
it's
just
funny thing
noticed
you
this.
said that,
Yeah.
Paul.
mhm,
Back in the day, when Greek gods, gods, Vikings, all that stuff, God of War, Valhalla took Thor perfectly. I'll tell you why.
Mhm.
He wasn't ripped. He wasn't bulky. He was fat,
Mhm.
chunky, a long beard, and he had a beard and he walked like a fat guy did. To
Mhm.
be straight up with you,
Mhm.
back then, that ancient world, let's say, was fatness considers you as a bodybuilder.
Mhm.
Bigger your
Because
gut.
we've had these periods of what the ideal physique was.
Yeah.
Even in this country in the 20s, 10s and 20s, an obese woman was desirable. You know what I mean? Curve, overweight was in then. And then you had the 70s where then you had like Twiggy and these models and everybody was super thin and everybody was anorexic and stuff. Then that became the standard. Now we're almost kind of like back to normal curves to kind of accept it again. But yeah, I mean, I think the comics, just in terms of how the characters are written, whether it be a man or woman, whatever the ideal body is, it just seems like that the comics seem to always reflect that. Like I said, I can't recall who was a fat superhero. I'm trying to, you had some fat villains.
The
Well,
Blob.
he's mostly a villain, right? I mean,
he's a
I know he
villain.
was a member. I know he was a
You
member
had
of
what's the
not X-Men, but what was
If
the
you
other
want to count
group?
David, there's one.
Don't you stop right now. Do not stop right now. But I wanted to add to the conversation before Ghost made a wrong detour. The idea of dealing with a woman who would avoid a plump is also that African cultural thing, meaning whereby if the woman is not thick or curvy, that means something is wrong or she's starving. That was a mentality where I find it uniquely strange for what it is.
Mhm.
But on the part of working out, there's a group of us who were into an anime, but when you watch the anime music video and a particular soundtrack will play behind it, it became a motivation to my kind of group that we go to the gym. We play that particular song. We compare ourselves to the Dragon Ball Z character,
Mhm.
how Goku pushed himself constantly to get to that next level. And a
Mhm.
lot of MMA fighter who had the same thinking I had, like Adesanya was thinking the same way. My
Mhm.
Kari Usman was thinking the same way. A couple of other MMA fighters were saying the same exact thing. We were fan of the anime music video people created on YouTube that became popular. And when we listened to those theme songs and watch how these characters were pushing themselves, when we go to the gym, we play that song, we amp ourselves. I'm not gonna lie. Certain music make my adrenaline rush go to the next level and I don't stop.
Mhm.
I'm an adrenaline junkie. I don't need to do drug or take steroid. I don't need that. Once I
Mhm.
have that unique song
Mhm.
play in loop, I'm a madman in the gym. Don't
Right.
ask me why I am, but that's what I get myself into it. If I have that zone, I'll be in that zone for 2 to 6 hours straight.
Right. Now,
That's what it is.
before I'm gonna turn over the Jedi. Back as far as the anime. Now, one thing I've seen. Now, again, I'm not an anime expert or anything, but the one thing I have seen with most anime that I'm familiar with, you talk about the late '80s, Akira, and all those guys. Nobody was jacked. Like the characters, they might have had superpowers or something like that, but if anything, the robots were jacked. But the characters, the human beings, they were kind of average. They were skinny. They didn't have super curvy. I mean, if you go back and look at Battle of the Planets or Gotcha Band series, nobody was jacked. In fact, even the guy Tiny, they called him. I don't know what his Gotcha Band character name was, but Tiny was a chubby guy. He was the strong man of the team, but nobody, everyone was slender. But if you look at, again, American superhero comics, certainly I would say after the golden age. Once you start getting to the 70s and 80s, they just got more. You saw the intercostals on the ribs and the 6-packs and the 8-packs and the quadricep muscles. Every muscle was to find the ladies. Every woman looked like a Barbie doll. Every single one of them. There was no skinny woman. There was no fat,
Yep.
obese woman. It was so, again, the characters themselves were drawn in such a way that was considered either, if not ideal, because again, the ideal in the God man in the 70s kind of would have like a dad bod today, but this was like the epitome of human development that I think also may have inspired a lot of people. But anime, not so much so. I haven't seen a lot of jack dudes in anime series, at least from my understanding. But you guys know it better than me. But
I would say it's a culture phenomenon behind that because in America, let me tell you why I say the culture phenomenon.
wow,
In America, what was the most logical thought process? If you got the muscle, you got the physique, you're considered to be strong. It's not correct.
right?
That was the thing that would push here. When you look at Japanese animation, you need to understand the cultural aspect of fitness and strength. It's not the same as the American. Because remember, there was a time American, the British, the Portuguese, and the Spanish came into China, Japan, trying to say, "Oh, just because you're not big or jack like us, you are weak." And they had the competition, which have been documented in history, whereby they got debunked when they got their ass whooped.
But it seemed like a lot of it was though like through their tech. You know what I mean? It's
It's through
almost
their
like you're about to like that whole Asians are smart kind of. Yeah, we're not necessarily going to be about beating you physically with something. We're going to use our weapons, our
Thank you, Eric.
technology, our whatever to overcome the situation rather than physical strength.
There was a classic anime that they had a Jack character, Fist of the North Star. That was a classic anime that came into victim, but there was a contradiction in that. And not only there was Jack, they were like giants.
Mhm.
If you Jack in some kind of way, you beyond a normal human size. You're towering people. You're looking down on people. That was a conflict in that particular anime. But if you look at all the most of the anime, you don't have to be Jack. You just have to have the skill set.
Mm.
Whereby in some anime, the most strongest individual was a little chubby, but you understand the physics, how do you hit body at an advantage than a disadvantage.
Right.
Kung Fu Panda, the idea behind that, there were times that don't sleep on a chubby person. He can use that against you and make you look stupid.
Mm.
And that's the thing about Chinese and Japanese philosophy. When you look at it
Right.
philosophy, it goes further deep to their idea of what a fitness is or what make a person strong.
Right.
Same
But
thing in
even
Africa.
in the martial arts genre, until Bruce Lee, nobody really cared. You look at Jackie Chan's body, you look at Gordon Liu's body, you look at Jet
Bingo.
Li's body. None of those guys. Bruce Lee kind of broke the mold, but and
He,
you had Bolo from Interjet, but it's not like they caused a craze where then
The
everybody was
thing
jacked.
is,
You look at the
thing
Eat
with
Man series
Bruce Lee,
now.
thing with Bruce Lee, with I have a martial art background as well. He was adapting multiple philosophy into one. Remember, he was a student of Wing Chun. He came to the state
Mhm.
trying to build his own system and called it Jet Kune Do, right? He incorporated the American aspect of fitness into it. So remember, you're adapting multiple philosophy. You take
Right.
one you were taught with, you
Mhm.
go to another country, another land. You are trying to perfect it, but you adapt another philosophy and you add it onto your own.
Mhm.
That's what the difference, because outside coming to the US, a majority of martial art wasn't so fixed on being jack up most. It's more of the
I don't think
conditioning.
it's really there now. I mean,
No,
you have
I say
outliers.
I say before. I
I'm
say
saying, but even
before.
now, I
I
don't
know
see it.
now it's a mix, but before that, it was all about conditioning and strength. What about having huge muscle? Because sometimes you find people who kind of chubby but have strength, great inner strength. They can use their body at an advantage and a disadvantage. That have over be a fundamental philosophy within martial art, depending what type of martial art you are practicing in. The act of now, it's a mixed bag in between, depending on what martial art philosophy you're using. Judo, you don't have to be fit. You could be a little chub and you can still throw almost anybody. You understand the fundamentals of the human body or human anatomy.
Mm.
That have been the key thing number one. So
Mhm.
not everything. Oh, you got muscle. I watched the biggest bulkier guy get dropped by the skinnier dude more often than usual, or because they know how to use your body against you.
Mhm.
So they're a unique sign that have been perfected thousands of years in these Asian countries that America have not even got to that deep level of understanding. Remember, they practice acupuncture, different type of medicine that is different from Westernization
Oh, sure,
medicine
sure.
as well. So there are two philosophies you have to understand. Everything's not based on what America thinks. This is absolute truth, because you go to
Yeah,
another realm, another country, you find there are things that have been perfected over time.
yeah.
That's why when you look at anime, not everybody. Some will
Yeah,
be
but it's the exception. I mean, Erica's talking about Ming Lo, who was the Toad in the Venom's clan. Very muscular man for the time, but it was rare. Nope, very few people look. I can count on one hand a number of like martial arts practitioners, at least in those films, those Shaw Brothers films or whatever. It's like, wow, that's an impressive physique. Everyone else had no definition, no muscle tone, whatever. And even in the anime today, so it seems like with the Asian culture, being jacked doesn't seem to be a virtue or a value. And I remember certain people saying you shouldn't have all that kind of muscle because it's easier then for people to identify pain points and pressure points and things like that. So you're better off not being jacked because now it's just like a map where they can pick out, okay, I can hit that and neutralize that. But Mike, why don't you get in here? As far as the imagery of the superhero, at least from the U.S. perspective, like everybody is like represents the body ideal that and especially since the 70s when pumping iron came out and people started going to the gym and lifting weights and bodybuilding and things of that nature. What do you think that impact has had in terms of our affinity for these comic book characters, how they're drawn and the artistry that goes into creating these figures?
Say, well, most of these characters, when they're supposed to be representing
Mhm.
human perfection, right? Even like the Olympian,
Mhm.
bodybuilding competitions and stuff, like those things are there for a reason. Again, with these characters, um, and like in terms of how they're drawn. There is also another motivation factor. People like, hey, I love Spider-Man so much, I want to be as slender as as him and everything. Even though he
Yeah,
didn't represent the
yeah.
big bulkier type of character, he's still again going to more slender but like more achievable type
Mhm.
of body, right? But again, going with Batman, no powers, but again, he out of all DC characters, for him as being a human, he representing human perfection in
Mhm.
terms of his physique and everything. I feel like that they're definitely saying the influence is there. And I feel like now that comic books have now kind of, they want to try to change to make things more socially acceptable. But even when it comes to women being pregnant and being fighters and everything like that, like bigger heavy set characters, like, again, you mentioned like there wasn't even or how if there was a like a bigger superhero or whatever, right? And there's a few, like, well, one in the Legion of Superheroes for DC, which is like a futuristic Justice League in the future. In the future, there's one character called Bouncing Boy, whatever, right? He literally just grows, like, size up to a ball and just jumps, and impacts people and stuff like that, right? But I think it's more the physique now. When you're seeing things being more okay. Well, let's kind of drawing people with different body types, even with women. Like, again, you talking about the dolls for a reason. Like, yeah, like the physique and everything, whether the breasts or or behind or everything like that. Like, again, some things that might be unrealistic, but like even when you look at Marvel Rivals, the game, video game, is like those like bodies like are even for everybody, like, again, they have just different, more overly exaggerated body types, and that doesn't seem somewhat, or saying realistic, but stylistic, right? And I feel like going back to the god complex and Greek gods, these you've seen the statues of all these figures and everything, but again, they're representing in the, you don't really see frail sculpture of a Greek god, you really don't, right? So again, the idolization of it, you know what I mean? So and I feel like if you have these characters supposed to represent the best, and yet then they're gonna be presented in a way where they're being the top tier in their physique as a person.
And then contrastingly, like I
yeah.
said, I don't recall too many superheroes. I'll certainly take what you're saying about, some of the newer ones that are coming up. But interesting, a lot of the villains, though, were on the obese side. Like Blob has, for the most part, mostly's been a villain. Kingpin, Halt Fisk,
Kingpin,
big guys,
yes.
So it's like, that kind of represents that kind of side of it that it seems to also be illustrated also. Go ahead, Dave.
There's an anime that is very popular called My Hero Academia. And what's unique about that particular anime, the plot of it, there's a society where almost everybody has superpower. And there's an academy that teach you how to use your superpower, right? But if you were to watch that anime from season 1 to season 7, it will show you every body type are not the same, but every quirk that they call it. You have a unique power, quirk. There's a science to it. Why the body the way it is, and the way they went about it for every different quirk. You had to give credit to credit due. The creator of that anime, that manga, also that came up, that based off, he trying to make it clear that not everybody are the same. There's some people have a unique body genetic whereby they had to accumulate a huge amount of sugar, even though the body is big. Don't sleep on that person because in case of a necessity or in case of an emergency, whatever amount of sugar he used, he can tweak it to a point whereby it became an extra burst. But when he burned all that sugar, his body shrink to that of a fit but skinny person. So he had to keep stacking up his sugar level, so he have a huge amount of power to apply back. That was a unique logic, and I don't think it takes someone who is a medical student who understand that there, but trying to train to a particular quirk. And there are many other different things that came along. So imagine someone creating different quirks that relate to different either body morphia or body genetic or body image, so to say. But it's built down to the science to what it look like. And we're trying to point out anyone could be a stupid. It doesn't matter who you are. You use whoever disadvantage or advantage that you have in your body to be an advantage, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that anime, like I said, we call My Hero Academia. Unique anime for what it is. Based on a big picture, it's more down to a science. This is why the idea of big people is strong, small people is weak. It's not always the same. When you
David, if you
mention
really think about it, Attack on Titan has a great example of that.
true,
As
but that
much, I
that
don't think it's a good show personally, That's my personal opinion. And I'm not gonna sit there and argue with you with your little scrawny face. Um,
Excuse me.
you hear me? I can call you. Listen, you get mad when I call you big. You get mad when I call you small. Which one is it?
No, when you
Jenna,
call
Mike,
me,
why do you look? You're about to fucking rip somebody's goddamn head
know.
off. You look like
The death stare. Yeah.
like I want to fuck you up, motherfucker. Get over here, kind of thing. Like
that's the pit bull look.
No, I'm going through emails. I got two different monitors
That's the
right
pit
here.
bull look.
Sorry.
I have
yeah.
the.
But anyway, hang on, David. So like Attack on Titan, for me, I didn't like the show. Okay, the personal opinion, but they did hit something on nail on what we're talking about. You have a human being creation, the Titans, who looks like humans. I'm the only one who's comparing apples versus oranges here?
And like I said, that anime had a unique twist of science in it as a player because let's be real, in every history, mankind have been taken with their human bodies, see what they can pull out or what they can
Accolism.
change
What is it?
or
Full metal accolism. I can't pronounce that fucking word.
from an alchemist. That's
Accolism.
another one. That's another one whereby you're caught in the third dimension or fourth. You're
And that's
dealing with
playing
things
with
beyond the
black
human.
magic too.
You're dealing with things beyond the natural,
Mhm.
where there's a level of contradiction come to play, which
Mhm.
means if you don't balance the equation, there's a cost you have to pay.
Mhm.
That's a philosophy behind that as well. Now, I was mentioning to you on my show on Wednesday, when it comes to the anime, we deal things according to a science of it. It's not just make believe or just throw it out there, but there's a level of science at play to it. That's why I'm referring, because when you mention Big Big Pun, what's his name? No, what that character, the villain for Spider-Man? What's his name again?
Oh,
Venom?
called the
No, the
Fisk.
big nose.
Big Kingpin.
Kingpin.
Wait,
Wilson Fisk, aka
Wilson Fisk.
Kingpin. His genetic whereby even though he had a huge body, but it's not fat, it's more of a muscle mass.
It's almost like
Because
it's like a sumo. I
Yeah.
think he practices sumo.
and that's the thing.
Yeah.
When he met his match, when he met the great version of the Hulk, we're kind of like, I want to say the word bitch slap, but it was actually what it is.
Right.
Because there's always a confusion of the human anatomy, thinking, like I said before, you being big does not always make you strong. Because there was an actual video on YouTube where two bodybuilders had someone who was a rock climber who never lift weight at all in his life, decided to work out with them. Not only he half their size, physically speaking, he was able to do the same amount of rep with the same amount of weight they were doing and much more. And it will shock them because people think that because you have huge muscle make you strong. No, I have done that same thing in my 20s.
Yeah.
Whereby I wasn't huge and jack, but I was lifting what most bodylifters was lifting, but they way more work what they were doing. Because
Right.
there's a science to the human anatomy. If you don't understand how the body actually is, you can never tap into that level
Dude, you're
of
martial artist
strength.
like me. If you hit the muscle correctly, you can make his whole arm numb very fast.
Mm. Yeah.
And you can use
I
it.
want to get let's get Angry Elf in. We're coming towards the end of the show. So I want to get his
Is
few
he
cents
awake?
in terms of the body, the drawings themselves, the figures, how
Yeah.
the representation. What do you think? And it's not like, I don't know if it's necessarily like motivating, because again, it's that stereotype. If you watch like Big Bang Theory, whatever, none of those guys look like they ever work out. They never care about working out. So I don't know if even drawing the figures in these ways it's not inspiring people. It's like, oh, I want to go to the. I mean, yeah, you got bodybuilders who go to the gym and they want to look like
Yeah.
a certain thing, whatever. But it's not the gym pop that is just looking, oh, I got to get jacked like a superhero or stuff like that. It's like, for a lot of the guys at Comic-Con, that's not their motive.
No, I think it's definitely two different ways of, or two different thought processes. I think a lot of the guys I knew who lifted and were trying to get big, we're looking at, you've already brought it up, Arnold Schwarzenegger's movie,
Pumping on.
yeah, and so, guys like that, or if they were deeply into the body lifting, they had a body lifting. What do you want to? Not character, icon. Anyways, but I think it's more, especially in today's comics, It's more of there might be a fantasy element, and also kind of like, here's the norm. I'm going to
Mhm,
take it up a couple notches.
yeah,
I mean, look at some of these heroes. I mean, they're just ridiculously jacked, and then you've
yeah,
got the females who have proportions that are
yeah.
almost not. Yeah,
If you saw
you're
one
not going to.
down the street, you could,
Yeah, and so um, I think it's just a fantasy element trying to
mm,
add. It's almost like the way the shape these bodies are drawn nowadays. It's almost like its own superpower.
yeah.
Um, you know what I
But I
mean?
remember this even in again, a lot of graphic novels that I remember getting this one book, The Last Kingdom. My mom got it for me, which was odd at the
Mhm.
time because it had like a lot of nudity in it and whatnot. But I'm like 8 years old. She gives me this novel or something. But again,
Yeah.
everybody in there. So again, whether you talk about barbarians, whether you're talking about again, there was like this image of the ultimate man and the ultimate woman,
Mhm.
and the man was always significantly larger than the woman, and that
Mhm.
sort of that thing was just always there as an archetype of what you know that looks like. The nerdy, the brainiac guys, maybe like Professor Charles Xavier or something. Yeah, not so much on the muscle side.
Right.
Or Reed Richards or something like that, or even Tony Stark for that matter. But then they started drawing him jacked after a while. I mean,
Yeah.
Tony
Which
Stark,
one?
Stark.
I mean Tony Stark. They started making him jacked after a while. But again, it's like there was a thing where like if you were like the brainiac, they made you kind of slender
Mhm.
and everything, and because you
The
were using
old
your brain.
comic book and an old cartoon that had him Iron Man. They made him look jack at one point.
Yeah,
Then when these, what's his name again? The actor himself, Robert Downey Jr.
yeah,
They changed it a bit and made it more like he's more natural, but he kind of fits in a way. He's not,
yeah.
and I
And
think
all
that
these
would.
guys, oh, yeah, all these actors, I always find the interesting the body transformations that they
Mhm.
go through. I mean, Hugh Jackman gets on there and he's got to eat 6,000 calories a day and chicken breasts every 2 hours and stuff just to kind of maintain that shape for a movie role and then get it out. So it's not easy even for guys who get paid full time. That the only thing you have to do as an actor, you already got paid. Only thing you need to do is go to the gym, eat, sleep, train, and rest. And 6 months, get ready for the role, and then show up on set and try to maintain your muscle mass as the filming goes on until the end. And that's basically it. So I'm thinking if it's hard for those guys to get into that kind of shape, again, for the general pop who, to fit that time in, I empathize with that. I mean, I've kind of gone on my little journey to gains. When I graduated college, I was 147 pounds at 6'3".
Mhm.
Now I'm 230.
I fucking hate
And
you.
that's just something that, but I've always been inspired, like, because I was that kid who was always picked on.
Right.
But it really wasn't until I got when I gave up I played a lot of basketball. When I gave up basketball around 20, I think it might have been like 27 at the time when the basketball, I had to kind of put that down, is when I really got serious about the gym. And then the light just kind of came on. And then it just became about just, you know, overcoming. Like, because I used to set these goals for myself. It's like, okay, well, I was 150 pounds at the time. I said, I want to get to 160, 165. I get there, I'm good. Now I'm at 165. You know what? 175 sounds good too. So I kept just
Yep.
advancing it. Now I don't have goals like that anymore. Like I don't want to get to 250 or anything like that. But the idea is you want to just be a stronger version of yourself, like all the time. Like for me, every workout is going to failure. I may not work out as often or do any kind of ballistic stuff anymore, but I want to go hard. I want to go and see if there's like a beyond. Going back to almost
Mhm.
that niche philosophy, go beyond my limitation. If I did 7 reps last time, it's like in my mind I say I have to get that 8th rep this time, or else it's been a failure. So I kind of go through all these sort of mental gymnastics to kind of get myself ready for that. But it's internal. It's not like I want to look like the guy in the comic book or any person in particular. It's just
Right.
for me, it's always just that idea of just pushing and breaking through to be a better version. Like every time I reach a goal, especially a fitness goal, it's like I'm saying, like, I retired the old person that I was. Like, I'm not the same person. Go back 3 months ago when I could barely lift 150. Now I'm doing over 200. It's almost like I'm recreating myself every time I train. And the result is going to be the next time I train, when I shatter that barrier, and then next time up, I got to put another 10 pounds on. I got to put another 5 pounds on, and it just keeps going. I know it can go indefinitely, and there's been times where I've had to take a step back. I didn't train today because I was just running around and I just didn't feel up to it today. So I listened to my body for a change and took a step back, not to do that, but that internal drive just to be.
Paul, I'll
better.
give you a better example. It was one of the bodybuilders on Generation Iron. I can't remember which one it was. He used to say when he got in bodybuilding, he was okay. He wanted to get 150 with abs. Then he wanted to get 200 abs, and so on.
Yeah.
He moved the bulk goes higher and higher and higher. I want to do this with abs. You know, he's always around abs. You know, that's the first thing to lose always.
Mhm.
And you pretty much did the same thing what he did. Just, I want to do this.
Well, it's. I think it started like that, but then it got to a point where, and I heard someone say this a while ago. It's like the true reward of accomplishing a goal is not what you get from it, but it's what you become going through it. The idea of, again, you breaking those old habits or things to recreate yourself. And that at the end of the day, you're better off for it. We were talking Thursday about just take care of parents. Yeah, that was a stressful, emotional time for me. But I became a stronger individual because I went through that sort of time of testing. And it was definitely something that if you would ask me, oh, yeah, you want to do this? I was like, no, I don't want to do this. But it was my task to do. And I stepped up to the plate just like you do, just like David did. We stepped up to the plate and we did what we had to do for the greater good, which again is a theme a lot of times of superheroes. There's a lot of self-sacrifice that these characters have to make in order to, even from those who they love, they have to protect either their identities or let them in on certain things or whatever, or live this kind of life for their protection, not necessarily that they don't want to share everything about themselves with them, but they understand that their enemies could exploit those as weaknesses for them. And so again, I want to, as we start to close out the show, I want to go back to that idea of truths, that as much as society may change, truths don't seem to change. And the human condition, as far as who we are, what we want, what our fears, what our desires are, we want to be loved, we want to be remembered, we want to be thought about, we want to be respected. Like, all these things are aspects of our existence that I don't think is changing anytime soon. And I think a lot of, whether you get it from your religion, whether you get it from the comics, whether you get it from novels or science fiction, whatever it is, they're always going to center in on these themes that we keep coming back to in one form or another. And then the last thing I'll say as we go around the room to kind of get everyone's sort of final thoughts is that I know some of the imagery that was seen earlier, and I know some people get offended by certain imagery, especially with Jesus and whatnot. I've always used that. These days, it's pretty hard to get me offended about anything. But I always try to look at things as an opportunity. Yes, to make the leap that this equals that may be a leap for a lot of people. But my thing these days is, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, yeah, there's certain things that may be similar. There might be things that are certainly different. This is why this is different from that. This is why Jesus isn't Superman. And then use that as a bridge to have a conversation rather than operating an offense that how dare they depict Jesus in certain ways. To me, it's just been a way how I've been able to minister, so to speak, to certain people, to bridge gaps with people, especially with younger generations that may not necessarily be going to church as often as they, as back in the day, or being dragged to church like back in the day. So it's just a way, it's just a tool of engagement where we can take some of these themes, find the common themes between them, find where they're different, and see if we can't make certain views, certain ideas palatable. Like I said, if you can believe in an astral plane of existence where the spirits of the dead go and commune, then do you think maybe there might be a heaven out there, in some form or fashion? To me, that's worth a conversation. And I think that with the comic book community that I've seen at large, I think there's a lot of spiritual people who are a part of that community, and only the most extreme of fundamentalists or whatever would ostracize that. I saw some things at Comic-Con. I could certainly see some fundamentalists saying this is demonic. You should never go here. Don't even be in that space again. But I think that that's an opportunity to connect with people on themes that, and themes that either the Bible talks about, or that, that we can build some bridges for greater understanding, and then make the faith, and I'm just being personal, the faith more powerful. At least think about, hey, maybe there might be something to this
Well,
that might be useful.
Paul, if you use Jedi, for example, the Jedi Order, that's a religion itself in a way.
Yeah, and George said that specific. I remember him in an interview. He wanted to be able to, how can I talk about God in a sort of sci-fi fantasy genre? So the whole idea of the Force, he got that from the Native American tribes. They talk about certain spiritual aspects and whatnot. So he wanted to kind of introduce that conversation. Now, again, people might have been offended by it, but it opened up conversation. I think there's always room for conversation, at least in my view. And as long as we can have those healthy conversations,
and
then I think we're all better off, and hopefully we can bridge and have better understanding. But again, I want to go around, start with Rob, let's go through and get everyone's final thoughts as we close out the show. But I appreciate you guys being a part of this conversation. Yeah, it's not the fun stuff that we typically do, but I hope this will be, this will be worthwhile, certainly for those who watch this later, that, as you consider these things, see those common threads, and, understand that, there's a linking throughout human history, and these characters stay with us for a reason. So Rob, Angry Elf, again, thanks for being here. Your closing thoughts as we end the show.
I think it's, like I was saying earlier, it's the continuation of the oral history evolved into our modern mythology, especially since we keep going back saying certain characters pull certain traits or powers or abilities from religion and other other legends that we have. So I think it's just also, especially how in this day and age, our whole world has, between the ability to travel and now multimedia, we've all become a conglomerate of each other. So, in one way, shape, or form, we're all the same.
Gotcha. Jedi Mike, again, I want to thank you for coming out. I know this wasn't easy for you. I know you're tired and everything. So you making time for us tonight, really appreciate you. So again, your closing thought, and also let people know where they can find you, your work, what your next projects are, and let them know what's going on. The floor is yours.
Yeah, no, I thank you. No, I thought it was a good conversation and everything. Again, with the comic book genre, again, there's a lot of parallels, and just in forms of storytelling that you see, imagery or parallels of biblical references and scriptures, and going into like religion and the idolization of gods, going into people who representing beyond the average man and something to believe in other than yourself, right? Heroes, right? But I think, as we mentioned before, again, how so there's a way in terms of how you depicting that in a respectful way, in another way of just showing it in a idolatry way of just trying to make a mockery of it all. Because there was also, I know there was one film we didn't really mention to, just like almost some of these biblical figures as heroes. There's a film called Legion. Anyone with Paul Bettany? He played Angel. Michael, it was Archangel Michael, and he when it was the ending days of on Earth and everything, but it was kind of like a zombie film, but it had a god in it, but you had the archangels kind of viewed as superheroes or above average men and everything like that. So but nonetheless, I feel this was a good conversation here. But you guys can follow me here on YouTube at Jedi Mike 7. Brought to you by Solo Media. My Instagram and stuff. I have still have things I'm posting soon. And this next coming week, finishing the finale of Daredevil, Born Again. I'm waiting for you guys to see this final episode because I have to wait until you guys see everything because we got the episodes early and then we had embargo, couldn't talk about it. But and I got some reviews and interviews coming up. Sinners, I'll be going to a press screening on Monday for that, so be on the lookout for that review. The new Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler film, and you can have more interviews and stuff coming up. So you can subscribe at here at Jedi Mike 7.
David,
Yeah.
Wake
Final
up.
thought. I'm up, and I wasn't sleeping. There was parenting going in the background. That's what I put it mic off. Then again, you're not a parent. You would not understand that, would you? Anyway,
At least I'm skinnier.
my final thought about this show is an interesting conversation. It's something that would take multiple countries to understand and grasp, but I enjoy it. It's something I've been doing for the past couple of years of my life, always trying to understand another person's point of view of why such thing exists. Even so, it got me to venture more into my cultural aspect on their deity and why such thing is existing to begin with. Is there a contradiction to it or it's not? Remember what I said earlier in the show? There's something that is truth to it and something just folklore to it. And looking at how it manifests in today's society, even the African American people are dibbling dabbling and things that beyond their level of understanding. They're just scratching the surface of things, which is even Jeremiah Key from my culture, where we sometimes look at it like, okay, good luck. But that is the thing to it. Some people are using the African North Greek folklore to create entertainment that you call comic book or anime or movie, and it's a money making business. Some people understand it's entertainment. Some people take it to the next level. Why they take it to the next level? It's based on that individual thought process. I'm aware that anime, comic book, and all the things are not real based on my foundation I have in my own personal life. I'm not in the military, but I have seen my fair share of madness that is equivalent to that overseas, not here. And some I cannot speak about because there's no way to comprehend it because it's not known on American aspect of understanding. But I get it. I have to show respect. This is why I have a high level of respect for people in the military, regardless of where they're from. Either you're from the United States, either you're from Japan, either you're from Russia, because it's not something to venture into. And then remember, I'm from a country that we have children soldiers, so let that sink in as well. But knowing about these things, hearing about these things, it became a mechanism to have people detach themselves from deep level trauma that could cause them not function to their society. So in a way, it's an excellent tool to divert from or entertain yourself from. At least it build up something. It's no different from wrestling. Let's be real. WWE is now making record-breaking money since Vince McMahon has stepped down, and it's crazy. But it's not only an American thing; it's more of an international thing. When they go across the European nation and you play Randy Orton's theme song, I'm listening and my hair and my skin is thin. I'm like, wait a minute, are they better than the American audience? Are you killing me? But yet you can tell how much of an impact it is. They are a human being playing a character. But if you go into Spain, they will sing the guy's theme song like it's worship. That is crazy. You cannot beat that. They were singing Roman Reigns' name in England like it's a new song, and I'm like, okay, they're making a whole lot of bread, and it's working. Same thing with the anime, it's doing the same exact thing. Same thing with the comic book, it's doing the same exact thing. When you broke down the history about the comic book, how they came to existence, it's a modern mythology that is based in the United States. Now it's also a global thing. So these mechanisms have a place in today's society for a particular reason. and for why everyone may have a different path or different level of understanding or concept behind it. But it's here to stay. It's not going nowhere no time soon. That's how I look at it.
And last but not least, certainly the leader, the head of the channel here, the originator, producer of the channel, goes to Sparta, aka Peter, aka Pariotis.
This
Floor
is
is yours.
Sparta.
That's pretty good, actually.
I really haven't too much to add because you guys already said most of what I was going to say. Is we fantasize something, we want something, we want to be somebody we can't. It could be a plumber, could be an alien, it could be a elf, it could be a Black David, whatever you want to fantasize. Up to you. Just make sure you bring one of these with you. I'm joking aside, guys. Seriously, no, it's. I think our imagination is the thing we want. Is something next. And something next is going to be big. Sometimes it makes me think: are these guys what we fantasize? Maybe it's not our imagination. Maybe it was fallen angels at one point, and it is embedded in our brains that we think are aliens or not. Who knows? But it's fascinating to me, and I enjoy it. I love my comic books and stuff like that. Two things about me, you guys, everybody knows already. I'm a big geek in heart, and I respect the military more than anybody. Right, Rob?
Yep.
Rob, I want
Yep.
one of these days. I gotta bring you back on. I want a story time with Rob.
Yeah, that'd be dope.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I want to hear the classified stuff. I want to hear the juicy stuff, not that like the little, oh, we just walked down the street and do nothing. We shot a couple bullets. I want to hear the gruesome stuff. Like, you see the sound of it? Hang on. I got a sound effect for that too. No? All right. You're not gonna fuck with me, bro.
Program update.
What happened?
Program updates.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that page. Hang on a second. All right, guys. So we're in the gray area. We are talking about corporal punishment. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
I hope I don't get PTSD again for this shit. And on Wednesday, my guys, are we talking about Neo Genesis? If you haven't seen it, you have no idea what you're losing. And that reminds me, I got to email our Payne for this one. I'm gonna get him on the show because I got one. I got a couple old people, but I need him specifically. The War of Generations. Yeah, I have to go there. And next week, Rob, you ready for this one? Ready? Bad trilogy versus good trilogy. He doesn't have a comment.
So we're comparing trilogies of what? I guess movie trilogies.
Yeah, good versus bad.
Okay.
So, accept that, guys. Paul, any final words before you walk the plank?
No. Again, thanks for the opportunity. Good show.
Yeah,
Thanks
dude, you know, it was the reason we call you Mr. President. Rob? Nope.
No.
David?
Yeah, I'm good.
Anything else you want to go?
Not yet on the Wednesday episode. Well, it's a twisted franchise, but let's see who will show up for the franchise. I hope it'll be very interesting. And maybe Jeremiah can join in the conversation to a Neo Genesis. I'm sure he's aware of it, unless he had nightmare. I don't know. If he got nightmare, he don't have to come.
Jeremiah,
I'm
any
listening.
last comments before we go?
No, I just appreciate you guys for having me and everything. Thank you, Mr. Bennett, again for reaching out and stuff. And anytime in the future, just let me know. You guys know where to find
Definitely.
me and everything. And again, appreciate you guys' support and
All right, guys,
everything.
as always, this was Sparta Execute Network. I am Ghost of Sparta. He, Mr. President, Angry Elf, Black David, Jedi Mike. As always, stay fresh, stay safe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
Peace.